This is Jason Belzer for AthleticDirectorU, and we're in beautiful Santa Clara today at the Pac-12 Championship football game. And I'm joined today by Larry Scott, the Commissioner of the Pac-12. Larry, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, good to be with you, Jason.
Likewise. So as we come to the culmination of a football season here, I'd like to talk a little bit about the state of the league and discuss first and foremost key performance indicators. How do you kind of analyze the health of the league from a metric standpoint, tangible metrics? Are you happy with the performance of the football programs in the league and overall?
Yeah, well, we'll start with overall. This is the Conference of Champions. So we measure success based on a few key metrics, including the overall athletic success of our programs. So that includes things like Learfield Directors Cup standings, number of national championships. The Pac-12 has won more national championships than any other conference in history, but each of the last 13 years. And this last year, for example, the kinds of things we look at is our conference won 12 national championships. Right. The next highest conference won 6. We look at Directors Cup standings as an example. And so our conference continues to be the leader in intercollegiate athletics across the board. In Olympics years, we look at how many Pac-12 student athletes, current and former, are in the Olympics. We look at drafts in NFL, NBA, how we're doing it. There's enough metrics out there to look at to measure overall athletic excellence. Given our mission is about student athletes, also looking at academic success of student athletes, other indicators around the student athlete experience and welfare. So those are the types of things that we're looking at as a league overall.
Sure. So from a quantitative standpoint, it's much easier to measure looking at wins and losses, championships, draft picks, whatever that may be. What about from the qualitative standpoint? You mentioned a little bit about the student athlete experience, and you guys have gone to great lengths to do some amazing things for the student athletes, both from a welfare standpoint, from a health standpoint. Can you discuss that a little bit?
Yeah, so we put that in the category of thought leadership and leadership when it comes to student athlete welfare. Those are two important strategic priorities and imperatives for our conference. So every year we're able to look at what type of legislation are we part of advancing, what types of programs are we working with our campuses in supporting. Right now we're thinking about things like mental health. We're thinking about things like concussions. We're thinking about things like career transition for student athletes. As a league, I'd say innovation is another qualitative metric that we hold ourselves accountable to. And for us, that's things like working on our global initiative, things we can do around our owned and controlled media company. These are the types of things we talk about with our membership and focus on.
Sure. So from a strategic execution standpoint, are you guys looking specifically at outcomes, saying this is what we're trying to accomplish, and then work backwards, or how does that usually work?
Yes. Yeah, I'm a big believer in goal setting and articulation, doing that in an aligned fashion with members, and then measuring against that. So we start with strategic priorities and imperatives, and then look at action items and specific goals against that.
Okay. And how about alignment? So you have 12 institutions, very different institutions in different parts of the country, obviously up and down the West Coast. How are you aligning the CEOs who each have their own massive organizations that they're running with their own interests and their own problems? How are you getting them on the same page to move forward in these big deals that are involving millions and millions of dollars?
So that is one of the big challenges in a role like this, not just with 12 very different universities, but then the multiple layers within each campus. There's kind of a shared governance model. There's CEOs, athletics directors, coaches, other athletics administrators, faculty. So the diplomatic skills involved in being a commissioner and leading a conference are every bit as important as some of the other harder kind of skills involved in roles like this. And it starts with developing really a shared vision for what's important. Again, I'm a big believer in annual goal setting, metric setting, KPI setting, and then annually measuring yourself against that. The challenge with a multi-stakeholder organization is, are the priorities fluid? And an issue comes up, and you want to make sure you're not losing sight of those things you said were going to be
Right.
the most important things to do that year. Of course, on every campus and in every conference, more and more we're dealing with crisis, we're dealing with issues management, so that goes with the territory.
Absolutely.
Having said that, really important to stay focused on those things that you all agreed were going to be the most important things to work on. So we spend a lot of time every year on a goal setting, metric setting, and then in the measurement process as well at the end of the year.
Sure, sure. So how important is it to have total consensus? I mean, do you guys move forward ever where there may be a split decision, or is any big decision done in a full consensus mode?
Yeah, I've found the culture in academia, which is the overriding culture for collegiate athletics, is one based on consensus, not necessarily unanimity.
Right.
There's a big difference between those things. But I think academic leaders are very comfortable with dissension, vigorous debate, and intellectual differences, but in a neat way, get to kind of alignment
Sure.
around, okay, this is the consensus going forward, and people are willing to defer if they don't feel particularly strongly about an issue. So I don't recall ever having a vote of significance on an issue
Absolutely.
with our CEOs on an important issue that was not unanimous or even required a vote.
Sure.
We usually get there.
Sure. So I think a lot of times people think that commissioners may have more power than they actually seem. And in fact, you can't really do anything without that consensus. Are you the one that's the driving force? Are you and your team bringing these things to the presidents and the CEOs of the campuses, or are you waiting for them mostly to come back and say, hey, maybe this is an issue that we need to deal with, or is it a kind of a split?
Every conference is probably different. When I was recruited for this role, our presidents and chancellors were very much looking for that type of intellectual and thought leadership. No question who's in charge and who makes the decisions. It's our presidents and chancellors, but they've got very, very broad, vast portfolios that they're managing on their own campuses, and they very much wanted me to help frame the agenda, make proposals, push the envelope on certain things, and then they would weigh in and make decisions. So that's the way it works in our league. We try to drive an agenda and bring all key decisions to them. But again, it's tied to annual goal setting that we have for what we're going to work in. So there's always a context for what we're doing and why, and what the priorities are for that year. And then, of course, you got to stay flexible and be willing to course correct based on issues that come up. But yeah, that's how we work. And when I describe leadership as a conference commissioner, I think of it as servant leadership. You can never lose sight of the fact that these are membership organizations. We work at the pleasure of universities. These are universities that are used to shared governance. So we also try to find that right balance between providing leadership and kind of pushing and trying to focus on decisions, with recognizing as a membership and service organization, you're doing it on behalf of the members. So if the members come to you and they feel that's something important, you have to be responsive to that as well.
Sure. So to that end, you deal with a lot of criticism, just like the CEOs in the league deal with a lot of criticism. Obviously, the media is always looking at some of the things that you're doing. How do you take it in from all shapes and sizes and kind of figure out what matters, what doesn't, what's noise, what really may be resonating with some of the things that are going on within the conference?
Yeah, it really all comes down to communication and staying in close touch with your members. Whether you're a university president, athletics director, or conference commissioner, you're out there. You're in the public spotlight. I think it's fair to say in all those roles, you probably get more credit than you deserve at times, and you get more blame than you deserve at times. But I think you have to understand that goes with the territory, with these jobs, with this kind of profile. And when you've got stakeholders and constituents and fans or audiences that care and have a lot of passion.
Sure.
And that's great. So, but with that comes, challenges sometimes in dealing with that. And you have to strike that right balance by being a good listener, being empathetic, sensitive to the feedback, open-minded, be willing to admit, if you made mistakes or you need to course correct or something, or if there's a different way to look at something, while not losing sight of what you agreed with your stakeholders you're going to be working on and why, and being prepared to defend it.
Sure.
Sometimes even if it's unpopular.
Absolutely. Lastly, the Pac-12 is uniquely positioned with the media rights deals that are going to be coming up here in the early 2020s, but it's still a ways away.
Right.
And because you guys are going to be the market leaders and potentially set the tone for the many deals that are going to be renegotiated over the next couple of years in the college athletic space, how are you and your team preparing for that with the long-term vision while also trying to be cognizant of making sure that you guys are best positioned to take advantage of what's coming down the corner?
Yeah, we've got a very clear vision for a media strategy that we really set in 2011. We followed it through with 12-year agreements with ESPN and Fox on the one hand, and then the creation of the Pac-12 networks on the other hand, and we're right in midstream. And because we committed to 12-year deals and got a lot of benefits from that, there's very little course correcting you can do in the middle of that. The market's changing a lot during that period. I think our instincts that technology would change pretty rapidly. Consumer habits and consumption habits would change dramatically during that time, and that we would benefit by maintaining ownership and control of our rights to be able to adapt and be opportunistic when the market changed is all, I think, proving to be true. I think there's a lot of validation for our strategy out there, but it does require patience and discipline, especially because our members in our schools, there is an arms race in college athletics. Success is sometimes measured short-term and relatively, yet we've got a long-term strategy. Sure. So we reset our deals in 2011. The SEC, a few years after that, decided to create an SEC network, and they were able to reset some deals. The Big 12 has reset some deals, created a Big 12 championship. The Big Ten's TV rights came up since then. The ACC during that period decided they wanted a TV network, and they then restructured their agreements with ESPN. So just have to understand timing comes into a little of this as well. We've got quite a different approach and strategy to other leagues in that we've maintained all of our rights together, all of our rights coming up in 2024, and I think the market is very much coming to us in a positive way, but it's really important. We have a lot of discussion amongst our CEO group and our ADs about this. While there are very, very significant short-term pressures, need to find a way to be responsive to those without losing sight of important strategic decisions you've made and beliefs that you've got. So if you twin those sets of issues with timing issues, I think our leadership is very comfortable with where we are and feel we're very well positioned long term, even though we may go through a few years where we've got revenue gaps and people may question kind of the short term, long term. I think as we evaluate, as we talk to outside advisors, and as the market keeps moving and we see Amazon taking big swings and we see Facebook taking big swings, as the market changes, I think our approach is being validated all the time.
Absolutely. Well, Larry, very insightful and nice behind the scenes look of the Pac-12, and appreciate it, and we will see you again soon.